Chapter 30 is all the way back in November, 6 months from now, but with the Year 8 roadmap being leaked online on Dead by Daylight community and in Dead by Daylight Discord servers, it's important to say that Chapter 30 is a very highly anticipated chapter release because of a couple reasons. And in today's video, I'm going to get into why I think Chapter 30 is probably a big licensed piece of content that will be coming to the game this November. So firstly, a paragraph in the past of Dead by Daylight has often meant mostly licensed content. If we look at the paragraphs that have come into the game, off the top of my head, off memory, Leatherface, Ash from Evil Within, I think Hellraiser, I think that was a paragraph. There's probably some other paragraphs that I'm missing out here off the top of my head, but I think most of the paragraphs that we've received in the game have been licensed pieces of content from what I can remember. So this sort of chapter in November, just being a killer with no survivor coming, basically it is a paragraph, although it is basically typically what behavior would be with their proper schedule of chapter releases. Obviously there's one in June for the anniversary, there's one in August, there's one in November, and then there's one in March typically, and this one sits in the November timeline. But the fact that it's just a killer, it's basically just one character. So with one character, I highly doubt that it is going to be original, because with it being one killer, it suggests that you're bringing in a very specific character into the game that you can obtain, rather than just creating an original killer for a paragraph, which wouldn't make sense to me in that sense. You'd want to bring in more of a survivor to build hype, because it's harder for you to build hype for an original chapter compared to a licensed chapter. And then if you want to do an original paragraph, that makes it even harder for you to build hype for it, because who's that interested in just one sort of character coming to the game that is original? So that's why I sort of think that it is licensed, because it is just one specific character, no survivors involved. And that makes me think that it is a big license as well, because normally when we have licensed chapters in the game, just in general, they will come with one or two survivors. Whatever horror franchise or IP license it may be, it will come with one or two survivors. But the fact that it's no survivors tells me that it's a license that, or it probably has already been arranged that it is a license that doesn't have any clear survivors, so they've just decided to go with a killer with the actual property itself and not include any survivors in it. And that sort of narrows it down quite a bit, and that means that we could possibly be seeing, I think, Springtrap from FNAF in Dead by Daylight finally. And let me just sort of go into why I think Springtrap is a high possibility for this sort of paragraph slot in November. And it's basically because in FNAF there is no clear survivor, while Springtrap is the main antagonist in the game. And in sort of the IP itself, I can't think of a main survivor from the FNAF series. So the fact that it's, no survivor in this sort of paragraph chapter release coming in November, and there's no clear survivor from that FNAF series itself, that's, if it is licensed, then it might be Springtrap, because there is no clear favorite for a survivor role. So maybe they wouldn't bother, the devs wouldn't bother with trying to get a survivor into the game and fit it into a storyline and create lore for a survivor, which doesn't make enough sense for them to include in the game. So the fact that it's just a killer, Springtrap would make a lot of sense on his own coming into the game as just a killer. His lore would be good, there'd be a lot of hype for him as a paragraph himself, because he's such an iconic character from such an iconic franchise in recent years that it doesn't really need a survivor. And that's the only way that I think that this sort of paragraph in November is going to be. It's going to be a licensed piece of content, a killer that is well known, well hyped, and of sort of a substance that excites the community. And so for me, I can't see how it's original, because that would just be a boring dead release from behavior in November. And with the way that they've started this sort of year 8 cycle, although we're not officially underway yet, it doesn't seem to me that it's going to be something that's original and something that's lackluster, although it is behavior, so you never know. But that means it could be Springtrap, it could be Pennywise. I don't think there's really a clear sort of survivor from the Pennywise IP that I can think of the top of the head. They could obviously make something work, but again, I just think that Pennywise is a good option for it, or it could be Slenderman as well. Off the top of my head, I'm just thinking of a few sort of names and IPs that could be just coming in as just killers. Because Leatherface didn't come in with a survivor. He was a paragraph, and he was a very highly anticipated piece of licensed content. All the other licensed content that have been, or all the other paragraphs that have been licensed content have been decent, sort of moderately big licenses themselves coming into the game, whether that be horror or Nicolas Cage just recently that's going to come into the game in July. So when we're looking at it from this perspective of Chapter 30, obviously we know Chapter 28 is going to be the end transmission, the singularity as the killer and Gabriel Soma as the survivor. And then we know Chapter 29 in August will be a proper chapter as usual. Whether that will be licensed or whatever, we're yet to really know anything. But Chapter 30 is quite predictable for me in the sense that I think it's going to be licensed. And it's just, it's just because there's no survivor really. And if you're just releasing one character, that sort of implies to me that you have a very specific character in mind that you're bringing into the game. And the fact that November's already sort of been confirmed as just a new killer, that suggests to me that it is a license, because you would have to have a deal done in advance to make sure that you could plan out your chapters. And Behaviour like to plan out their chapters, 9 months to a year in advance of when they actually release. And now we're in May and it's coming out in 6 months. So for it to just be a new killer, that suggests to me, or obviously I could be wrong and it could be original and look stupid, but it suggests to me that there's been a deal going on with a license, with an IP holder, to obtain a specific horror icon from a certain franchise, whether that be FNAF, it might be Pennywise, it could be Candy, whoever it may be. But it suggests that they've got a deal in place for that to be released in the November slot for year 8. And it's very exciting. I think it's very exciting times for Dead by Daylight, with these sort of good... Obviously, we'll wait and see on the PTBs and the actual release of the anniversary chapter and following chapters, but Chapter 30 looks to appear to be licensed. We've got a lot of licensed content coming into the game, I predict, this year. A lot of chapters, a lot of gameplay updates, so it's looking like a good sort of year already from the outset for Behaviour. But Chapter 30 for me is definitely one to keep an eye on. I think we're going to have a lot of good updates or pieces of info, maybe even some leaks and rumours that come out about Chapter 30, and there'll obviously be some sort of news coming out about other things in the game which will be covered on this channel. So yeah, look forward to that, and thank you for watching.